Have you ever looked at a chart and just had a gut feeling about it? You know, a sense of what the data is really trying to say? We tend to trust charts to give us the cold, hard facts. But what if the story you're seeing isn't just in the data points, but in how it's all presented, and more importantly, how you see it? Let's actually put your perception to the test right now.
Okay, take a quick look here. It's just a simple scatter plot. Do you see a relationship between these dots? Do they seem to be trending upwards? Don't overthink it. Just go with your initial gut feeling. You got it? Okay, hold on to that thought.
Because here's the thing we have to remember. Visualizations aren't just a pure, objective window into the data. They're really more like a language. The person who made the chart, they chose which words, which visual elements to use. And you, the viewer, well, you're interpreting that language through the unique filter of your own brain. So, first up, let's dive into those visual elements. We're going to look at a couple of really common tricks of the eye that can totally change the story a chart tells, all based on some fascinating research from the Toyota Research Institute.
So when the data is this clear, when the points are all clustered together like this, our brains are actually fantastic at spotting the trend. We're just natural pattern finders. You can see that upward relationship pretty clearly, right? This is our baseline. This feels intuitive and easy.
But watch what happens when we add just two little dots. See them down there? All of a sudden, the whole picture just feels different. That upward trend, does it feel weaker to you now? Maybe even stronger. Those 2 points are literally pulling on your perception. But the question is, by how much?
These points have a name, of course. They're called outliers. You can think of them as the rebels of the data set, the points that fall way outside the main group. And as the research shows, they have this almost magnetic pull on how we interpret the overall trend.
So how do statisticians actually deal with this problem? Well, on the left, you've got a pretty common method called a Pearson correlation. Think of it like a tug of war, where every single dot, including those outliers, is pulling on the final trend line with equal strength, so it gets yanked around pretty easily. But on the right, there's a more robust method called Spearman correlation. It doesn't really care about the exact value of each point, just its rank in the overall order. This makes it way less sensitive to those extreme points. So the big question is, which one is your brain doing right now without you even thinking about it?
And this is where things get really, really cool. This is the first major finding from the study. Your brain is not using that simple Pearson method. Your intuitive visual system is actually behaving more like the sophisticated Spearman method. You instinctively know those outliers are kind of weird, so you automatically give them less weight than the other dots. Your brain is naturally more resistant to their influence than a basic statistical formula. I mean, how cool is that?
Okay, so our brains are pretty smart about handling outliers on their own. That's great. But chart creators have another tool they love to use, one that's supposed to help us see the trend more clearly, the trend line. But the real question is, does it actually help, or does it introduce a totally new kind of bias? All right, check this out. On the screen are two charts showing the exact same data. The one on the left is just the raw dots. The one on the right adds one single black line. Now be honest, which one feels like it has a stronger, more convincing correlation? For almost everyone, it's the one on the right. That simple little line has a really powerful psychological effect.
And yep, your gut feeling is right on the money. The research confirms this again and again. Adding a trend line consistently makes people perceive the relationship in the data as stronger than it actually is. It's like a visual amplifier, turning a maybe into a oh, for sure in our minds. It's a subtle but powerful nudge.
But wait, it's not all bad news for our friend the trend line. They can actually be used for good. In a clever twist, they can become a tool to help guide our eyes away from the very same outliers we were just talking about.
So here's the key takeaway. If a chart designer calculates the trend line based only on that main cluster of data and just ignores the outliers, that line can act as a perceptual anchor. It holds our focus on the real story, helping us resist the pull of those distracting little dots. It's a pretty smart way of using one visual trick to fight the bias created by another one. Okay, so everything we've talked about so far has been about the chart itself, the visuals on the screen. But what about the stuff that we bring to the chart? Let's talk about maybe the biggest filter of them all, your own pre-existing beliefs. Imagine this chart is no longer about some abstract X and Y. Now, let's say it shows the relationship between political affiliation and belief in climate change. Suddenly, you're not just a neutral observer anymore, are you? You have feelings about this. You probably have an expectation, a hope for what this chart should look like. And what we're talking about here is a classic psychological effect,
confirmation bias. It's our brain's natural tendency to look for and give more weight to information that confirms what we already think is true. And at the same time, we tend to downplay or even ignore evidence that contradicts us. It's incredibly powerful when we're looking at data.
So when does this bias have the biggest impact on us? The research points to one key ingredient: uncertainty. As you can see here, when the data is strong and the trend is clear, the influence of our beliefs is actually pretty low. The evidence just wins out. But when the data is weak, when it's messy and ambiguous, well, that's when our beliefs rush in to fill the gaps and tell us the story we want to hear.
To be specific, the study found that with weak correlations, participants systematically overestimated the strength of a trend if it aligned with their personal beliefs, and they underestimated the very same trend if it went against their beliefs. The messier the data, the more it just becomes a mirror reflecting our own biases right back at us.
Okay, I know this all might seem a little daunting. Between visual tricks and our own internal biases, how can we ever trust a chart again? Well, don't worry. Just being aware of this stuff is the most important step. So let's wrap up with a simple toolkit for becoming a smarter, more critical chart reader.
Here are 3 simple questions to ask yourself next time you're looking at a scatter plot. First, actively hunt for the outliers. Ask yourself, what would this chart look like without them? Second, be skeptical of the trend line. Ask, is this line really helping me see the data clearly, or is it just making a weak trend seem more important than it is? And third, and this is definitely the hardest one, check in with yourself. Acknowledge your own feelings and beliefs on the topic, and ask honestly, could my hopes be coloring how I'm seeing this data, especially if it looks messy?
And all of this leaves us with a really fascinating and kind of tricky final question that the researchers brought up. If we know that different people will see the exact same chart differently because of their biases, what should a chart maker do? Imagine a future where a chart could actually adjust itself. Maybe it dims the outliers or adds a special trend line based on your specific biases, all to help you see the objective truth more clearly. Is that an incredible tool for better communication? Or is that a step into a really manipulative, kind of Orwellian future? It's a tough question, and it's one we're all going to have to grapple with as we navigate this age of data.